I'm Justin McRoberts, and you are listening to the Title Pending audio series, a collection of readings focused on moments in my own creative history that I hope shed an inspired light on yours. Chapter 4, a suggested practice, steal from Tom Petty, or master study. There are trails on the mountain that were not carved out by machines. Instead, they've been worn into the landscape by the feet of wise, experienced travelers who know the best and most interesting ways up the mountain. In the absence of an expert trail guide, following the trails they've left behind is a more than sufficient practice. For me, Tom Petty would be an expert trail guide through the world of music. He's a better songwriter than I am. Just think of it. Tom Petty could coach and critique me, pausing occasionally to remark just how far I've come in only 40 minutes and then offer me a refreshing beverage and a snack. It would be glorious. But that's not going to happen. So in the absence of my trail guide, I've often taken to doing the next best thing. I follow his trail by ripping him off. I hereby confess to you, dear reader, that I steal from Tom Petty. And if you are a singer-songwriter, I honestly think you should put this book down as soon as this chapter has come to a close. Sit down and write a Tom Petty song of your own, using a Tom Petty song as a template. The truth is that my imitation is very often an unconscious part of my creative process anyway. You and I are captured by our influences. We're constantly making things that sound and look and feel like other people's work. And there's nothing at all wrong with that. So instead of pretending like we're the first ever fully, wholly original artists in the history of art making, let's intentionalize that natural inclination to borrow from others and use it to our advantage. Inspiration is a wonderful place to start when making art, but we often move too quickly from being inspired to innovation, making our own thing with, hopefully, our own unique signature. I believe imitation is a missing link in much of our artistic development. So don't just be inspired by someone's work. Make it part of your work to learn how it is they do what they do. I've most consistently practiced this discipline as a musician and wonder if you might find some parallels between your discipline, if you're not a songwriter that is, and mine. Here's what songwriting master study has looked like for me. I pick a Tom Petty song and first learn it exactly as it is: tempo, chord shapes, melody, lyric placement, etc. Once I know the song well enough, I then write something just like it, using the following principles. I write it at the same tempo. See, I naturally play guitar at a certain tempo. Just about every player I know has a tempo at which he or she is most comfortable. In my case, I usually settle somewhere around 92 beats per minute. Whereas for someone like death metal band Slayer, it's closer to 400 beats per minute. Regardless, the only way to break free of my natural tempo is to practice playing songs in other tempos. Now, because time and tempo, like so much about making art, is predominantly tied up into muscle memory, playing at a tempo other than 92 beats per minute can feel pretty awkward. That is, until I've actually practiced it repeatedly. This is just like learning how to throw a ball or learning how to play a chord. One's body gets used to new forms and patterns over time and with practice. So I practice studying a master's various tempos. I use the same chord structure as well. Does she play that G chord barred or open? Is there a brief sustain, or is the chord played without movement? Does she leave an open E riding under that C chord? I try to do it exactly that way, or as closely as I possibly can. Just as is the case with tempo, I have a certain set of chords and chord structures I like to use. As my ear attunes itself to other and perhaps better sounds, I grow to have a broader spectrum of chords and structures to choose from. I also pay attention to lyric placement. As part of the long discipline of becoming a good or great lyricist, learning where to actually place words or fit them into a song is vital. You've likely felt either that long, awkward space between phrases and known something ought to be there, or you felt the even more awkward squeeze of having far too many words for the space the song provides. So let's look at that master again. How long are her phrases? How does the lyrical rhythm work with the rest of her arrangement? Do her lyrics land on upbeats or downbeats? Does her lyrical rhythm work with the rhythm of the song's main instrument or fight against it? By the way, you can adapt this practice to whatever art form you choose. For example, when I set out to write my first book, I took time before I started, and throughout the process actually, to read works in similar genres by masters. Because the book hit a memoirish belt, I read a lot of David Sedaris and took note of the way he characterizes the physical features of space, item, or persons. Several of the pieces in David Sedaris' book, When I Am Engulfed in Flames, held me in place for long moments, describing a tone or a face or a tear in fabric. Those details gave me a sense of place within the story he was telling, and because I like to make people laugh, I thumbed through the old Dave Barry books and was challenged by the way the humorist would never let a joke, as funny as it was, take a story off the rails. He never sacrificed the whole journey for a good, funny moment. In a similar way, my wife studied studio art in college, and as part of her coursework, she spent a good chunk of time not only looking at, but repainting or resculpting pieces by master artists. All in our home is Amy's study of Wayne Thiebaud's Black Shoes. I find Thiebaud's original piece particularly remarkable because the artist painted black shoes with black laces on a black background without using black paint. Instead, Thiebaud employs various shades of green and blue and even the occasional stroke of white. The execution of such a thing takes a considerable amount of skill and vision, the kind of skill and vision characteristic of a master artist like Thiebaud. By repainting that piece and others like it, Amy learned at least some of how that master achieved the effect. By imitating him, she learned a few of his skills and caught a glimpse of his vision. In the practice of art, there are very few formulas. A master study, imitating the way of superior artists, is one practice I've found that consistently bears fruit. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Title Pending audio series. If you've enjoyed listening and you'd like to take another step or two in the direction of your own creative process, navigate your way to yourcreativeprocess.info. And there you'll find an online course I've designed for you.